And I realized that that's okay because that's because you love them. You love them so deeply that love and that missing them is coming up. We have to welcome that love. We have to welcome that grief, and we have to welcome that sadness to let go, to release it. It's very important.
Well, and when we're feeling those emotions so intensely, and this is something. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the ADHD Eavesdrop, where you can be a butterfly on the wall and listen in on my conversations. And today, my conversation is with Cheryl Dics up in British Columbia, Canada. And we are so excited to have her back. We've had lots and lots of exciting guests on the show, but it's always so nice to have the familiar, comfortable Cheryl presence back on the show. You always have so much to share.
Thank
So
you.
welcome back.
Yeah, wow, very nice. It's very nice to be here. And we're diving deep today. We're going to talk about a little heavier topic today, so I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah. So you and I have never shied away from a difficult topic. I mean, the last topic we took on was conflict, which is a pretty big topic. So today we're going to look at grief and loss with people with ADHD and neurodiversity. And when we talk about that with neurodiverse individuals, people might be like, well, what does that have to do with anything? Right? We all grieve the same. Do we all grieve the same?
No, we don't, unfortunately, because our brains are seeking dopamine and understanding, and our neurotransmitters fire the way they do. So, what happens for us is we feel differently, we feel stronger, we feel longer. And it takes us a while to reconcile emotion when it comes to grief and loss, because grief and loss is it's like a stab. And when we feel that, a lot of time it takes some extra processes to manage that energy.
Absolutely. Like you said, us ADHDers, we tend to feel everything very deeply, very strongly. And so our emotional regulation plays a big part in how we work with our grief. I know I'm just going to share a story with my grief and I lost somebody last week. The intensity of the emotion of even when you know you're going to lose the person's been sick, the person has been, right there on the verge of death, it's still that shock, that disbelief at first, like, how could this possibly be true? And then severe, strong, I mean, just sobbing and not being able to stop crying for like going on 24 to 48 hours of nonstop crying. And some people might say, well, that's a little excessive response, where you're doing crying constantly. Take a breath. So, but for me, it was like my eyes just wouldn't even stop going. It was not in my control. And there would have been a time in my life where I would have been embarrassed about that because I felt like I was overreacting or because I felt like, you haven't seen her in almost a year. Or why are you responding in this way? That's a pretty common experience for people with ADHD is to,
Absolutely.
yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
For sure. And the reason why we're talking about grief as well is everyone knows that I'm in recovery. I have 5 years sobriety, and my sponsor died last week. So we both are going through these challenging emotions. See, I can just feel the energy just welled right up there. And it's been a week and a half for me, or almost 2 weeks now. So our bodies have this intense response, but we also start to feel a little bit of guilt and shame because we've heard in our entire lives, you're an overreactor. You're reacting too intensely to this. Like, why are you so upset? You haven't seen this person in a year, like you said. I did see him just a few weeks before he passed, and I was going to see him, and I intuitively knew he was going to pass away before I got back, and he did pass away the day before I left to go back down to see him. So you feel like I should have done this, or I should have done that, or I could have done this, or I could have done that. So we internalize it about what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing according to societal roles, expectations. And that makes that emotion so much more intense because you're saying, I shouldn't be this sad, or I'm not sad enough,
Yeah, I
or
haven't cried yet. Why
even
am I not crying?
so a lot of the times we get stuck. Like for me, I was lost in shock. And I did cry pretty quickly, but I did stay in shock for a couple of days, and I immediately got insomnia, which I love sleeping. Like, sleeping is one of my things. It's like my go-to, my happy place. And I immediately was staying up till 2, 3 in the morning. And my husband had mentioned to me, he said, "Hey, babe, like, you're staying up really late. What's going on?" He goes, "When did this start?" And I sat with it and I thought, when Doug died. So that was my body's way of trying to process this information. Like, 'cause I'm lost in the shock and a little bit of anger because some self shame and guilt that I didn't get to see him that one last time. So the ADHD mind, we have to be aware that we do feel stronger and we do feel longer, and it's okay.
Hmm.
It's okay that that's what's happening for us, that we aren't going to, just as other people have experienced something, maybe they've experienced loss before, in a loss in a certain way, right? And they've done it, so their brain goes, "Okay, I get it. I've been here before. I understand what's happening." They've gone to the new place, I'm staying here behind, and they just kinda move on with their lives. For us, our brain never makes that connection. They think this person was here, and our brain doesn't understand that they've gone to the new place, so it gets, like, dysregulated. It says, "I can't understand, I can't compute with what's happening." So that's where the intensity of the emotion comes up, because it could be a slight trigger. You had breakfast, you had bacon and eggs, and you remember the last time you had bacon and eggs with this person. Boom, here we go. Because the brain is trying to regulate it, and because we have emotional regulation issues, it struggles to find that balance. So we're gonna talk briefly in the end here, just how do we can regain that balance. Hopefully that answered your question.
When you say, like, and then boom, you start crying again. Let's take that one step further where in the next minute, you're pissed.
Mm.
It's like you're crying and then you're just mad. You're mad at the world. You're mad because you're crying. You're mad because of, how dare they leave me? And anger is such a righteous emotion. It's one that, we can fall into pretty easily, but then fall right back into the sad. And, it's so, and we feel it so strongly. One
For
thing I
sure.
would say is when people are going through this type of thing, a lot of times ADHDers can find themselves in a depressive state pretty quickly.
Yeah, they move into apathy quite fast. And to add to that is, what are the circumstances to this person leaving? Is because they were ill. Somehow we can manage that. We can regulate that. We can make, you know, understanding of what had happened. But what happens when it's something that was out of that person's control? That person was taken, it was an accident, it was at the hands of someone else. So that's where your anger's really gonna trigger, right? Because now we're gonna blame this other person, the circumstances, what if I did this or didn't do that, or what if I called them, or what if I did these things? And we can really internalize and get into in that RSD event. We start to reject ourselves because we think we had some sort of control over the outcome, and then we can get lost in that. And unfortunately, for some people, that can be days, weeks, months, or even years. Some people never recover from the loss of someone. And that's the unfortunate part, because, we talked earlier about, I'm going to ask you now, if you died today, do you want me to give up 6 months of my life?
Absolutely not.
What do you want from me?
I want you to think of me and remember me fondly and think of the happy times that we've spent together and cherish the fact that we had what we had.
Yeah, because, the reason we have such an emotional response is because we cared about that person. We valued that person. That's the gift. You got to love this person. You got to enjoy this person. They don't want you to suffer. So it's up to us to give them the gift of being able to move on, but being able to move on in a way that actually fits, not just get over it, but move on in a good way, in a healing way, in a helping way. And, you know, you're going to have your good days, you're going to have your bad days. And that's the stages of grief. If you want to look up the stages of grief, look them up. They're quite profound and they're pretty accurate. But for us ADHDers, we get lost in the shock. We get lost in the grief of the anger, and then we get it lost into some fear. Did you wanna talk briefly about the fear that we can feel?
Yeah, there's a lot of there's research that talks about this as well, as far as when we lose somebody, on top of the idea of we're feeling sad because we've lost that person, we've lost what we might have had with them in the future, all those things. On top of that, a lot of us experience intense fear over what am I going to do without this person? Because this person filled a place in our lives, right? And so we're going to have to adjust in some way. And there's a lot of fear associated with that, especially if this was a person who supported you in a lot of different ways. But, like it's going to change. How is my life going to change? Because of this person's loss. And that's terrifying to some people. When my dad passed, I do remember feeling like, "What does this mean for me?" Because my dad is gone, I can't ask him these things anymore. I can't even though he'd had Alzheimer's, it suddenly felt like that huge support system in my life was just suddenly gone. But as far as healing ourselves through the process of grief is, first of all, we have to be aware of the fact that we are grieving and that, we may be grieving in a way that's leading to some places we don't want to be. Um, being aware that it could lead to depression, being aware of those things, and being kind to ourselves and being gentle with ourselves and knowing that no two people grieve the same and that you're not doing it wrong. There is no right or wrong way to grieve, and I'm gonna throw in here too, after you grieve for a while, your time blindness might kick in.
Good observation. Well done.
Let's talk a little bit about the time blindness thing because suddenly, sometimes it will feel like that person passed away 10 minutes ago again, and everything will come back with that same intensity because we have such a difficult time with time, right? And then other times you may forget about that person for months and months and months, and then suddenly remember them and feel terrible because you haven't been mourning them and grieving for them. You've basically forgotten about them. That's okay too.
That's okay. Just to bring up a brief story about that, I had a golden retriever mixed with a Burmese. I love that dog. He was like 150 pounds of pure love, and he went with me everywhere. We hiked everywhere. He was always in the back of my truck, and, of course, he passed away, and I had that object permanence, he'd been gone, and it'd been a while, a year and a half, and I was driving down the road, and this woman was walking this large golden retriever, and the whole family was in the car. And I pulled over and boom, I was bawling my eyes out. And they're like, "What's going on?" I just said, "I'm just thinking of Muck Muck." And it
Mhm.
just felt that so intensely, right? I had to pull over. I had to even now I just think about it just because he was like my lifeline for so long, and just seeing him, a dog similar to him, just triggered me unbelievably. So and I realized that that's okay because that's because you love them. You love them so deeply that love and that missing them is coming up. We have to
Yeah.
welcome that love. We have to welcome that grief, and we have to welcome that sadness to let go, to release it. It's very important.
Yes. Well, and when we're feeling those emotions so intensely, and this is something, what can we do right now when
Mm,
I'm in that moment? When I'm, like I feel like the world is collapsing on me. I'm terrified. I don't believe what's happening. I can't stop crying. Whatever those things are that's going on for you, that what's the first thing I always say? Take a breath,
yeah.
right? And I'm not saying that ironically. I do not say that ironically. Stop and breathe because a lot of times people will hold their breath
Mhm.
or, they won't be regulating their breathing. But regulating your breathing starts regulating your body, your nervous system. If you take slow, calm breaths, you're going to calm your system and you're going to be able to bring yourself back into focus. Are you gonna stop feeling sad? No. But you might stop crying for a few minutes. And when I say a few minutes, I'm like, that could be a win for you if you've been so out of control that you haven't been able to stop. So, yeah, take a breath or 6 slowly and carefully, and then I think that leads into what you were gonna tell us about is what can we do in that time when we do get that calm down again to help?
Yeah, and what I suggest to people too when they become emotionally dysregulated is the five things. So just sit where you are if you're crying. Let's look for five things you physically can see in your environment. Right? I see a drum. I see a picture. I see a candle. I see a picture. I see the light switch. Right? Five things you physically can hear. So that focuses your attention to your ears. Right? So what can I hear? You might hear traffic, a siren, nothing. I live in nowhere, so I always hear nothing. I can actually hear the electricity in my lamp. I heard my cell phone just vibrated. Five things that you physically can feel, not emotionally feel, but just physically feel. Like I can feel my feet on the floor. My feet are a little bit cold. I can feel my fingertips. I can feel my lips moving and I need a glass of water. And just acknowledging these physical features. And then five things you're grateful for. Right? Like, I'm grateful that I'm with you right now. I'm grateful to be happily married. I'm grateful to live where I live and live off my land. I'm grateful that my children are healthy and happy. And I'm grateful that we're having this conversation. So when we can do that, we lower our sympathetic system. Our system just starts to slow down a little bit. We become that sort of grounding. So when you're able to do that, if you've listened to me and Janine before, you'll hear some of the stuff that we talk about. We have a sacred self, we have a sacred spirit, but we also have what's called a sacred space. So, and we also talk about having a committee meeting, but we can dive into that in another podcast if you want to take a look. They're pretty cool. So, what I suggest people to do, and I walk people through this one on one, we welcome our sacred space. So, we go to that place that we feel the safest, where we can just be who we are. Mine is a garden. I open a door, I walk into a garden. There's a beautiful pergola there and I can sit with my sacred spirit and my mentor and my guide, and I ask them the questions that I need the answers to. And I did that in the case with Doug, and again, I've done with this with clients. And she said, "You're ready to sit with him." So I go to a park, and there's a park bench there, and you sit down at the park bench. Welcome the person that you love, the person that has passed away, and imagine them coming towards you, walking towards you. They can look however you want them to look. They can look beautiful. They can look younger. They can look healthy. They can look excited to see you. However you would like them to come, you allow them to sit with you. So now the two of you are sitting in your safest place and you're using your imagination, your intuition, your ability to use pictures. Allow them to sit there. And then just sitting there next to you may be very comforting to you. Second, ask them the questions you want the answers to. Mostly, the first question is, are you okay? You will be surprised what you hear. And they're right there with you. Because remember, we have a body mind. But when you're in the sacred space, you're in spirit. Two spirits never die. So you are with them. Ask them the questions you want the answers to. How do I move on? How do I let you go? And you can listen and hear what they have to say. You can ask them to tell you about where they are, who's there with them. You can ask them, I can't stop crying. How do I manage? I don't know how to manage. Hear what they have to say to you. You know, my sponsor, he's very matter of fact. When I said to him, how do I get over you? How do I let you go? And his response was, you will. And I said, but that's not fair. He says, and that's okay too. And I took so much comfort from that, that I don't have to just drop him. You also can tell them how much you feel about them, how much you love them. You can tell stories. Hey, remember this time we were driving over to the community and we were going to talk about, you know, alcohol recovery. And we were talking and talking and talking. The next thing we found out that we were in Yale and we were going to Chilliwack. So we had driven like 45 minutes past where we were supposed to go because we were lost in our conversation. And we had learned so much. I'd learned so much on that drive, you know, and I was so blessed to be able to have that time with him. And then I said to him, how do I keep being sober? How do I keep doing the work without you and your guidance? And he said, "Just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing well. You've learned. You've taken all I have to give you." He said, "Pass it on to other people." He says, "You will find a sponsor." And he goes, "And you will find him close by." My sponsors are male, so I do violate the AA thing, but, um, "You will find him close by." And sure enough, I found one. He's an hour away.
Really? Congratulations.
So he is still taking care of me. And so, as much as I love him, and he knows I love him, as much as I miss him, and I wish he was still here, I know he's okay there because he told me so. So I asked him, "Will you join the committee?" And for those of you, we have committee meetings. So we go to our sacred space and we invite our mentors and our guides. Our sacred self is there, and our parts, our personas are there. So Doug sits now at my table. So whenever I need help or advice and I need to have a committee meeting, at my table is Doug, my sacred self, and Jesus. That's who I go to get advice, mentorship, and guidance. There, you can choose to have them there with you. That's your choice. But there is a point where this conversation does have to end, and let them know that it's okay. You know they're safe. You know they're happy. You know they're in perfection. And when they're ready, you can let them go. One other question I failed to ask was, what is the lesson that you have to teach me about this experience? And my lesson from Doug was, if you didn't meet me, I never would have met you.
Hmm.
And that was the comfort. That was the joy that I get from being able to love another and them to feel that same love for you. And when they're ready, you let them get up in their time and you slowly let them walk away to go to where they came from, where we too will go when we leave to where we came from. They've just gone to a different plane, but you can go to this bench anytime you want. Sometimes for us, it might be every day for a little while, but keep asking the questions. What are the lessons I have today from you? I can't do this. I can't move on. Listen to their guidance because they're coming from perfection now. They're no longer human. That's the
Absolutely.
gift that you can give yourself. And then once they release and go, and they've gone, come back to where you are. Maybe if you're lying down or you're choosing to meditate. Again, do the 5 things. Because you are human having your spirit having a human experience, you've now re-entered the body mind. So 5 things you physically can see, 5 things you can hear, 5 things you can feel, 5 things you're grateful for. And you can be grateful for the conversation that you just had so that you can be regrounded back into this place and you can then take a step forward. That's how I help people. And I've had a lot of good positive feedback with this experience. And I've helped myself when I lost one of my dearest, dearest friends. And I will. I will get over it at some point. But he wants me to live. He doesn't want me to stay lost here.
That yeah, speechless. Yeah, I don't even know what to say because that was just so beautiful.
Did you see your friend?
Well, no, but I will. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you do take this journey, put a comment in. What did you learn? What was their message that they sent you?
And I have a feeling that I mean your relationship with your sponsor is a lot different than my relationship with my friend. So I'm sure she's gonna have some smart ass comments for me to make me laugh.
And that's what makes it great, is it is what it is, right? It could be a colleague, it could be a friend, it could be a child, it could be your child, it could be, your parent. They're all gonna have different messages for you, and that's what's the greatness of this process is it is what is right for you in that relationship.
So, Cheryl, we've had a great conversation. As always, I'm so happy to have had you here. Some last words from me, and then I'm going to give you the very last word. But I just want to reiterate to folks that there is no right or wrong, right? There is no right or wrong way to do this. It's just getting through it sometimes and being graceful with yourself and being gentle with yourself. So those are my last words. What are yours?
you get to do this process. This process is a gift. You're going through this process because you loved, you lived, you had a relationship with someone. That's the greatest gift. Love is the greatest gift. You feel this way because you felt love. But there's no beginning and there's no end to love.
Very nice. I love it. So, Cheryl, thank you so much. And I assume that you will come back again sometime and share your knowledge. And with that, our butterflies on the wall, if they like what they hear and they want to hear more, we hope that they will like and subscribe. And as Cheryl said, we want to hear, what are your thoughts on this? If you do take your journey with a loved one, tell us about it. Let us know what you feel, what you think. We would love to hear it.
Absolutely. Trust
Absolutely.
me, the journey's worth it. Take the time.
And with that, we'll see you next time.
Peace.